Hello, and thanks for joining us for another edition of In Conversation. My name is Wayne Phillips, and I work for AWS in the public sector business in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Working with partners is a big part of the DNA of AWS. It's our partners that enable our customers, both large and small, to benefit from the agility, innovation, and the transformative powers of the public cloud. And today in Conversation, I'm joined by three panelists from partners who specialize in providing public sector organizations with advice to help them understand the benefits and to overcome the blockers of moving to the cloud. Welcome, Chris, Dob, and James. So how about you introduce yourselves and your businesses and tell us a bit about how you work with AWS and how you work with public sector customers. Chris.
Thanks, Wayne. It's great to be here. I'm Chris Farley. I'm the founder and current CEO of Advice Cloud. We're a public sector procurement specialist. What we do is we work with buyers to help them understand how to buy cloud and digital services, because, and these are public sector buyers. Some of them aren't particularly comfortable with doing that. And we also are lucky enough to work with the supply chain as well, with suppliers that are looking to either enter into the public sector.
Wayne, thank you very much for having us here today. My name is Dr. Lauth. I'm the Chief Executive and one of the founders of HeleCloud, a cloud-born technology consultancy and managed services business that helps organizations of all sizes, including public sector organizations in the central and local government space, make the most of cloud and building secure, compliant, highly performant, highly resilient, cost-efficient, and from an operational perspective, effective solutions for running their mission-critical systems on the AWS platform.
Hi Wayne, my name's James Herbert and I'm founder of a business called Not Binary. And we're focused primarily on government and primarily on keeping our clients relevant, I guess, in the digital economy. And we've believed for, well, nearly a decade now that in order to remain relevant, they've got to be using a modern, scalable, flexible cloud platform like AWS. Our core business is building beta and live products out on AWS, developing new products and services for our government clients. But actually that quite often involves a lot of preparation and design and architecture around data and technology and data standards, etc.
Fantastic, so great. So between you, you've all got many years of experience working in or working for and working with the public sector. And the last few years have seen many important and complex workloads move to the cloud. But what do you see as the main drivers for this? And are those drivers evolving over time, James?
Where it's really changed is that a lot of government bodies have produced business and digital strategies with some really ambitious goals around how they want to use data, how they want to be more user experience focused, how they want to be quicker, how they want to be more efficient, etc. And of course, all those things are about people and culture and ways of working, but you can't do them on the wrong technology.
Right.
Specifically, you often can't do them on the legacy technology that you're already sat on. And you know, there's been a lot of talk over the years of hybrid cloud, hosting, co-location, all that kind of stuff, which is all okay, but actually in the end doesn't meet the goals of those business strategies. So I think the evolution's been mainly driven by a dawning realization, probably in the last 3 or 4 years, that if you want to deliver those board-driven strategies, you've got to be on the right platform, and that AWS is a major part of that.
And what would you call out as maybe one of the 2 or 3 top drivers for that you've seen recently?
Originally, the driver was often around cost and efficiency and closing down data centres, but it's evolved on from that now. I think you're looking at new business models in the private sector and you're thinking government departments and other public bodies should be learning from those, and if they're using these platforms, then we have to deliver the same sort of experience to users of public services, and you would assume that part of doing that is by using the same platforms as those organisations are using. So I think it's kind of shifted from cost through to experience.
Interesting, yeah. Dob, you've been with AWS and with the cloud for a long time.
Indeed.
What do you see as the drivers and the enablers of change?
Yeah, if we look back at 2011, which is when I started working with the AWS platform, back in the days, the discussions that we used to have with customers were around security of the cloud. I can't touch it, I can't see it, I can't go into these data centers. Is it really secure? And then there were discussions around, for instance, hosting and how do I actually move my Windows and Linux operating systems as well as storage arrays to the AWS platform? What's the best way of doing that? And is it really going to be cheaper to run such workloads in the cloud as well? These were the discussions back in 2011. I think all of that has changed now, and I'm actually quite happy to say that today security and compliance are becoming the reason to move to cloud as well.
Very good. So Chris, from your perspective, Dob's talked a bit there about the technical enablers. From a procurement and business perspective, what are you saying?
I agree with both James and Dob, actually. First of all, probably about 7 or 8 years ago, we were dealing mostly with migrations, supposed to be cloud migrations, but actually was to private cloud or hosting. And then as the market's now matured and people are much more happier, I think, about the kind of solutions that are available. And by using frameworks such as G-Cloud and Digital Marketplace, the level of solutions that are available on there is kind of like the new norm now. So people are able to actually access these as a nice large tail of suppliers, a mix of SMEs and larger suppliers, a good presence for AWS on there as well.
Of course, of course. Well, it sounds like things have changed and are continuing to change. But the flip side of that, how have you seen the objections to the cloud, or perhaps even the enthusiasm for the cloud, change with the people that you work with? Chris?
I think from a procurement perspective, we're still finding buyers that don't understand how to use and how to buy cloud properly. They're still very much focused on the old ways of working, putting together a massive specification and taking that out to the market. Where this is where we tend to really get involved, is where a buyer, the CEO or the service end user will say, why am I being told this is going to take me 9 to 10 months? And we're like, no, you can get this done in a week if you get things going really quickly. So, that's where we're seeing a lot of the take up there.
We don't really get objections anymore because the appetite, as you said, is there to do it. I think what we're trying to encourage our clients to do is to think about talent and think about talent in a way in which they've never really had to think about talent before. Because as Dob said, there is a war for that sort of talent, and AWS isn't just one thing. It requires talents across lots of different features and products and services, and that's quite hard for our clients when they've got very structured HR processes, very structured ways of hiring and retaining people. That's quite a difficult thing for them to cope with. So we try and work with them on that really early on. And then finally, the other thing that's not an objection but it's a challenge is how does AWS mirror their business strategy around what they want to use technology for? So are we talking about migration, rationalisation, what you might broadly call modernisation, or are we talking about using the new evolving kind of ecosystem of features, products and services in AWS for them to launch almost completely new services or business models? Those two things require slightly different approaches and different governance, as Dob has mentioned. So.
But the reality, of course, is that despite the changes and the growth, as we heard from Chris, there's still only about 3% of workloads are in the cloud today. So today, come on, let's get the crystal ball out and have a look into that crystal ball and see what the future for cloud over the next few years in public sector might look like, James.
The way that AWS is going, I think, is going to force some fairly fundamental business decisions. So the modernisation and the migration that I mentioned before is really important. You might need to close a data centre down, you might want to get off that mainframe, migrate an SAP before it goes out of support. It's all good stuff and it's all important. But fundamentally, it's not transformation, it's not radical transformation, it's doing what you already did, but doing it better and in a better way on a better platform. What AWS is allowing with all its developments around voice, around data, machine learning, etc., is for you to experiment and spin off new products and services much more rapidly and more cost effectively than you could have done in the past. And when those experiments are successful, to scale them.
And I think artificial intelligence can be used everywhere in public sector, including in central government, in local government, everywhere where we need to analyze large amounts of data, everywhere where we need to find the answers to the questions without even knowing what the questions are, everywhere where we need to detect anomalies, everywhere where we need to make decisions as well. Everywhere where today human brain is required, we should be in a position to use artificial intelligence and machine learning as well.
Well, we heard from James and from Dob about the skills from within the customer. What about the skills from within the industry? How do the skills of the suppliers of cloud capabilities and the people that you work with need to adopt and evolve?
They just need to get more flexible, to be honest, get more flexible and be able to meet those customer needs and really understand the organisations that they're working in. Public sector can be seen as still quite a difficult place to do business with, understanding the myriad rules and also, you know, a lot of CEOs don't really have the patience to deal with public sector. You know, it's a long game when you're in there. And, you know, salespeople as well, they do need to have an understanding that things do take some time to change. But when they do actually get those deals and things like, you know, and things scale really quickly.
What I see, which is a good thing, is that we've moved away in the main from these large 10-year inflexible outsourced deals, but they've been replaced to some degree by quite widespread body shopping. I just wonder whether you can envisage, because you're an expert in this area, a kind of move towards shorter term but kind of outcomes-based work packages on this type of.
I certainly would hope that would be the way forward. You know, the other side of the G-Cloud framework, the sister framework, the digital outcomes and specialist framework, seems to be really driving that sort of behaviour. And if you look at the stats of the throughput from that, it's a massive uptick at the moment. So that certainly seems to be the way things are certainly heading in that direction, I'd say.
Very good. Well, look, thank you for your predictions. We must reconvene this panel in a few years and see how accurate our crystal ball gazing was. But sadly, that's all we've got time for today. So Chris, Dob, James, thanks very much. That was a fascinating conversation. So that's all we've got time for, but please join us again for another In Conversation.